I'm like, we're professionals. All right. Welcome to the Completely Unreasonable Tour. And I have my guest, my buddy, Andrew. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're gonna hop right in, and Elliot, feel free to hop in when you want, but I wanted him to go first. I want you to take me through. We'll just call it an intense experience that you've had. I want you to just walk me through it. Close your eyes, get as detailed as possible, and just tell me about whatever this experience is from front to back.
All right. So I'm not sure. I'm sure you went through this training when you were in the Army, but the Dunker, the helocast training, you ever go through that when you're in the fuselage? They drop you in the pool, they spin it. So for part of my old job, that was one of the school or courses we had to go through. So it's kind of crawl, walk, run, just like everything else in the military. You get dunked first with, slick, no gear. Then you go, blackout goggles. Then you go gear with no vision, and you just keep progressing all the way to the point where you're in, full battle rattle, blackout goggles, and then you're breathing on a small HEEDS bottle, which is like maybe 10 breaths of compressed air. And one of the last evolutions I can remember still, it's a cross cabin evac. So you're in the back of the fuselage and you got to kind of shimmy all the way to the front. So you're still on air, but you can't see anything. So it's all about orientation, right? Because when you get dropped in the water and you get spun, it's chaos. So it's about orienting. So if I'm like sitting in my chair, right, it's like keeping yourself pinned back and just making sure you're as tight against the structure as you can be, and then just waiting for the structure to settle. So I'm like chilling upside down, find my HEEDS bottle, put it in my mouth, take a breath, hanging out, kind of like nudge next to me, still feel the flak. So I'm like, oh, my boy's still over there. Lean forward a little bit and like nudge the flak again, and I feel it like float away from me. So I'm like, well, shit, like there's no one in the seat. So I'm like assuming like I'm in there completely by myself, but because I'm on that and I know I'm through my air, I start to panic a little bit, even though I know that's going to make me go through my air quicker. But I'm like, all right, there's no one here. I can just hustle and just move out of here. But as I leaned forward in my seat a little bit, I wasn't as oriented as I thought. So I was kind of like at a funky angle. But as I shimmy down all the seats and I find the edge of the door, I go to swing myself out and out of the exit. But because I wasn't fully pinned back, I'm like 2 inches off and I go head first into the bulkhead. And I just remember like trying to swing myself hard out quick and like crunch in the top of my head. And I remember feeling like my neck just totally compress, and then things just go like black and calm. So I'm like, all right. And then I wake up out of the pool getting sternum rubbed by, one of the divers. They get the water out of me and stuff. And it's like, and, we're with the dude. So like you want to play it off. And it's like, that sucked, obviously. Guys are talking shit and everything like that. But it rattled me a little bit, like inside, because like, oh crap, like if this was real life, I'd be dead. Like, I'm glad we have training like this, but like I'm dead. So like that stayed with me for a second. But when right away, as soon as I kind of like cleared the air and I got up, they're like, all right, back in, let's go. We got to go. And like that initial thought inside of me, I was like, I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go again. I don't want to do this again. Like, but I know what happens. Yeah. But then I'm like, I look around after I like kind of step back from that emotion a little bit. Cause like, when you're in an emotion in the beginning, it's like super intense. So it's like, all right, pull back. And I'm like looking around and I see all my teammates and stuff. And then like the reality sets in. It's like, bro, if you don't do this, like this is small. If you don't do this, like you're gone and there's someone else like waiting for this opportunity. Right. So it's like, and then it makes you think back, like, well, you go through all these other things and all these other obstacles I've had to go over. Like, am I going to let the fear of something that just happened stop me and halt all the progress of the things that I've just done? Or am I going to have to make a decision because I'm around people that I trust? And even though it's scary, like I'm not dead, I'm still here. Like, yeah, that was a really crappy experience, but it's controlled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, trust it. So like going back in the second time, like, was I nervous? Yeah. But the second that I could feel the water going up my lap and then you get spun back. And then next thing I know, I'm completely upside down and it's like you're underwater again and it's peaceful. And you're like, well, here we are again. Like, I can't worry about what just happened. I
There's something
can't,
to be said.
yep, just go. You got like, and that's almost like, when you ask me that, like, that's the, I haven't thought about that story in a while, but it brings up a lot of things because I'm not like, I can think of a lot of times in my life where I've been scared, but I can think of more times that being
Yeah.
scared hasn't stopped me from doing something.
Well, two things, right? One, the moment right before you get dropped. What does that feel like?
I was fighting. I was looking for the way out. Like, so I wasn't out until it was like being taken out. Like my focus was still on like, get out of this vessel, get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, oh man, what
No, I
happened? Like,
mean right before they dunk you, right? Do you
oh
remember right before they dunk you?
yeah,
Yeah. What did that feel like?
uh, hard up in my throat. Like, I can't talk
Yeah.
my way out of this one. I can't. I gotta. It's. I gotta be all about that action right now, boss. Right?
Yeah.
Like
That's
the
all.
second that water comes, it's real again. Like you can't. Like, what are you gonna do? Like you're back in it.
Yeah. All I can remember is in all situations like that, all I can ever remember is hearing my heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then trying to get it under control. And then I used
Mm-hmm.
to think about, and this is stupid, but this is what, and I still do this to this day. I still think about Jimi Hendrix.
Mm.
Fine. You don't care about me. I don't care about that. That's all I think in my
Mm.
head. I just repeat it over and over. So, anyways, dude, I appreciate you sharing the story. One of the things I want to kind of get across or talk about when we have these things is just intense moments and what that meant, and then what it means today. Because a lot of times these intense moments are what kind of shapes us and changes us, or we think it's what shapes us and changes, but it's actually the actual part of it that we don't talk about. Like you just said, and I'm glad you said it. Like, wake up and you're looking around and you're like, "Fuck, I have to do this again." Those are the things that, like,
Lucky me.
Yeah, but think about had you not done it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, had you not done it, what does that mean?
Yeah, I can't live with that.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm constantly talking about regret less.
Mm-hmm.
How I want to regret less. It's one thing to have a situation that you can't change. It's another thing when you have to make an active choice to be like, nah, dog, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I like I said, I appreciate it, and I'm glad you shared the story with us. So,
You know what? Something else I was thinking about. Yeah, what you're talking about that, right? Because this is the natural thing for somebody like me to do, or someone else who's listening, is because here's what I'm thinking while you're describing that. I'm thinking if I've ever been in a situation like that with a physical experience like that, and I haven't. I don't have a frame of reference of like, oh yeah, like I know what that's like. But I think one of the things that we're drawing from this, or hoping to draw out of this, is that experience translates to other things in life, other moments in life, other situations you're in, other times. I've never been in a situation where I've had anyone put blackout goggles on my face and put me into a fuselage. But I can say that there have been times in my life where I've been faced with situations where metaphorically it sure as hell felt like that, where it was just, you need to go. And this is a time to go to make a decision. And I think that's an important thing when we're talking about how these things connect and relate, this physical representation of it versus also what that can translate to or transition to or whatever, in terms of the parts of Andrew that you're talking about earlier with the heart and the mind and all the things that go involved in this. It's all, there's parallels that run between all these things. You gentlemen have both been in situations though where it's not only that, it's literally the physical embodiment of it.
yeah, I mean, I think to me, it's much like when we talk about the Pain Olympics, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no gold medal. There's no gold medal. There is no whatever. This is it's what you have, and it's what you just do with it. I do feel, however, that like more chances you have to stick your neck on the line, put your neck on the line, the better off you are. That fill in the blank, right? Whether that is you're going to Dunkers, you're getting ready to do a powerlifting meet, anything where you get to put yourself in a situation where it feels a bit more things are at stake.
Sure.
Things
Sure.
are
Or you're standing around a gym in St. Louis and I'm begging you to choke me out so I can feel what it feels like to have a large man on top of me, maybe almost ending me. And me yelling everybody, hey, you got to have Hanse come choke you out. Like, hey, whatever, hey, come, you got to get over here and try this out. Because literally, I mean, I was literally like trying to like jazz people up for it. Because I mean, for real though, that's how I looked at that situation. We were there and we were practicing some rolling and doing some stuff like that. And I was like, I've never been in this situation like this before. And nor do I know if I ever will be. But if I ever am, I would like that to not be the first time I experience it. So if I can simulate it here, let's see what happens.
Well, you know what? You just touched on something great, and I'm sorry if I just cut you off, but you just touched on something great there, which
you're good.
You just found ways to you right away. You're like, well, I may not have something in my life that connects with the experience you just said, but you have found a way to create a similar experience where you have been put in a position where it's hard for you and you're forced to make a choice. And I think reality, that's what we're all talking about is like, are you willing to put yourself in a position that you're uncomfortable where now you have to make a choice, right? And sometimes that choice is as big as like what we're just talking about. And then it can also be as small as getting out of bed today because I'm depressed. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? But like, it just depends on the context that we all look at it through. Like, and going back to that pain Olympics, or even to build on that, like a trauma Olympics, trauma knows no boundaries. Trauma, like our body's not like, oh, that's a combat trauma, that's a car accident trauma, that's an abuse trauma. Trauma's trauma. And all of us know exactly what it feels like to be happy, sad, depressed, angry, resentful. We all know what that feels like. So if we tap into that, we can all have, even if we don't have the same experiences, we can gain understanding. And through understanding now, we can build a process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, man, that's a mouthful. Like having understanding and being able, one, to provide and give grace to other people, give grace to yourself, and also like once you can formulate that understanding of the fact that like there is no Olympics, there is no gold medal here. Mm-hmm. Quite often, man, I think this is what we see with people who are depressed or sad or trying mm-hmm. to deny their depression or their sadness or whatever. Insert fill in the blank, right? Is you want to be like, I don't have a reason to be as mad as him, or I don't have a reason to be as sad as her. I have a reason to be it's not as traumatic as that. When in all actuality is you can only handle what you can handle. Mm-hmm. Right. And the reality is some points in time in your life that, and I'm going to steal from Elliot here and make a video game reference, even though I don't do it, is your life bar. Video game. Sometimes some chapters in your life, that shit is tiny. And other chapters, it's huge, man. And it matters because if you encounter it when it's low, like, and you're still under the guise of, this shouldn't be as bad because it's not as bad as what he went through, or I've went through worse, then you can't recognize it, you know? And I think one of the keys to recognize it is actually just letting yourself feel, right? I think sometimes, like not to get on a thing, but like sometimes we short circuit the thing and end up prolonging it, right? Because I don't want to feel. So instead of like just feeling it and just getting the 1 week of just let me walk around in my sweatpants for a week and not do anything, it becomes 90 days of woe is me, which woe is me can quickly turn to this shit's never going to end.
Because I think when you do that, when you do what you're talking about, it goes back to Andrew. What you're saying is the way you describe that scenario, which is you phrase it as when you went back the second time, this is small, right? Like it didn't feel small the first time, and then the second time you come back at it, there's a different perspective that can be gained when you come back at something a second time.
So, Drew, Drew, to kind of get back on track, man. Let me ask you a question, or let me get you to give me a bio that you don't have to give me your full bio, but like it's your elevator pitch to the world.
Okay.
I know. I'm gonna fill in any blanks you missed that people need to know.
Well,
But
how about this? Wait, how about this? How about we start by the wonderful meet cute story of how you guys know each other? Because
yeah, that's
it's
fine.
one of my favorite things. Yeah.
Go ahead, Drew. You got it.
You know what though? Like, it wasn't even anything crazy, honestly. Like, it was a really small meet at like a small little church up on like way up, tucked away somewhere. Where was it even? Wailua? Like, we were tucked away in the middle of nowhere. There was like
Yeah.
maybe there was like 8 lifters, I think, and like 4 of them were my friends. So it was like pretty much like a glorified bro sesh. And I had just got back. My sister-in-law had just got married, so I had just gotten back from a trip. So I'm like fat and happy, extra big. So I'm like 242 class. I'm 5'7", so it's like mailbox status right there. But then my boy walks in, and I'm like, I've never seen this dude before. I've never seen this guy before. He's in a singlet that's like 2 sizes too big for him. He's the only guy in my weight class, and we're like the warm up section was outside, like rusty bars, rusty plates, and it was just kind of grimy and cool. And I just there was something about him where it was like I've never seen this dude, but he seems like a cool guy, and I'm pretty talkative. So I was just like, "What's up? Like, what's up, man? How are you?" And like through the meet, just kind of like talking each other up, gassing each other up through the meet. I think that was the first time I ever benched 400 pounds plus in competition, and squatted 600 pounds or deadlifted 600 pounds in competition. And like him being there and like being a part of that, because like when you're lifting, like it's kind of like I always attest it to like getting ready for a fight when you go to get ready for a big lift, because like if you don't come correct, man, that gravity is going to smack your face and it's not going to be pretty. So like you got to go in there like ready, put your dukes up and let's fight. And he kind of like helped put me in that mentality. And where he probably doesn't know this, but at that time in my life, that was the second time in my life I was close to ending everything. And it was like, it was someone who I could pour into, who was like, oh, this is a good experience. Like, this is fun. Like, it like put a little bit of like joy, like a joy deposit in there for me, where it was like, oh, it's a cool guy, like something to live for. Because I'm over here looking at all the reasons not to live, and it's like, boom, there's something to live for. And like something as small and stupid as a weightlifting competition, and I don't even compete in powerlifting anymore. And like here we are, and like he's a totally different person than the person that I met, and I'm sure I am to him. And it's just been kind of like a wild, crazy trip, and it's cool. Like I love this dude, and I love seeing where he's going and what he's doing, and just happy to be a part of it.
Dude, so here's the parts he left out, right? I show up in a singlet it's actually 4X. It's 4X. I didn't know you had to have a singlet. The guy is like, you got to have a singlet. I got one in the back you can buy for $10, 4X. And I'm like, fuck it. I buy it. I do the 80s video tie up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Jesse Spano? You have full just like
I can't believe I forgot about that.
I don't know any rules in powerlifting. So Drew walks me through the entire thing. And this is where, for me, I was like, oh, this dude, he's legit. Lets me borrow his belt, lets me borrow his wrist wraps. I'm not sure. I think you even let me borrow your knee sleeves. I pretty much I was stealing him. I was being him.
I might have even fed you too, because I always came with a spread. I might have even fed you. I'm not sure.
You did. That was the other reason why I was like, holy shit, like this is legit. Like I'm competing, they're feeding me. I've got new gear to wear.
You're trying to take his life. You're just gonna slide in. They just give you bread.
Yeah. I'm like, powerlifting's so dope. What are you talking about? But yeah. But like how nice and how kind you were was a big deal, because one, my impression of what I thought powerlifting and powerlifters was going to be. I thought it was going to be super standoffish and like a bunch of dudes like, and so to walk in and that's what you're greeted with, I was like, oh, okay. right? Because I had never lifted before. I didn't train for that meet. I didn't know what powerlifting. I just literally Googled Oahu competition 2015 because I was trying to get into jujitsu, but all the jujitsu classes were only late in the day, and I only had early morning free time. So I was like, well, I can train by myself. But anyways, so yeah, that's how we met, and then even later, another friend of ours was like, hey, you two need to meet.
Mm.
We had already met, but
After
we
you'd
didn't
already
really,
met.
Yeah.
That's
and
fun.
so that's when we really hooked up, chit chatting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's it. But here, man, I'm not gonna let you get away. You got to give me at least
Okay.
a minute elevator pitch on who.
Okay, cool. I am a certified strength conditioning specialist, so I run my own business, Siepka, where I do private coaching and then small group coaching. I run a group called Operation Restore, where I do kind of like an 8-week hard reset, physically, mentally, and emotionally. More so catered towards men, but open to anyone. But I just really like the idea of peeling back the layers, right? Like using fitness as the hammer, and then the emotion and mental as like the scalpel, and then performing the real work that needs to get done. But I'm also a strength and conditioning coach for the Marine Corps. I run 2 of their fitness programs. One is aquatics based, and then one is land based. So I'm the head trainer at the base that I'm at, but then I also jump between 2, and I'm the lead instructor for one of the courses that we run. I'm a mental health advocate, veteran advocate. I've worked in veteran mental health for 8 years. I took my first job breaking up fights and doing urinalysis for veterans coming out of prison, all the way into working in outreach for post 9/11 veterans. I've had my own battles with mental health. I've tried to kill myself twice. I've got to travel the world, probably pretty close to the whole entire world. I live in one of the most beautiful places. Abundantly blessed in every single avenue of my life. I have a beautiful wife who I don't know what I did to get her, but hey, don't let her figure it out yet. But man, I'm just a dude trying to be a good dude and leave a good footprint in this world, really, at the end of the day. Trying to help as many people as I can while I'm here, while I still got air in these lungs.
Dude, I love it. So that's who you are. So I'm gonna ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Who were you?
Ooh, I was a very wow. Angry, bitter, driven by trying to prove people wrong. Um, I was always a high performer, but I was fueled with a lot of negative emotion from things that probably came from my childhood and then just compounded through my life. Um, and I used that fuel to not always be a good person or be as good of a person as I could be. And got to the point where I let a lot of hate consume me, and it killed off a lot of the person that I was. But through that and through a lot of hard work, I've been able to kind of rebuild myself, and it hasn't been easy by any stretch of the imagination. But I can tell you 100% that it's been worth it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I mean I can attest to it. At least as a friend, I can tell you that I'm stoked you're here, and having you around as a friend who I can also identify with has been key. And I say that not to just blow smoke up your ass. I say it too as a point in what I think part of an unreasonable life is, right? And that's part of a tribe having right. It doesn't take 20 friends. It doesn't take 100 friends. It takes 6 good friends, right? Like I said, 6 good friends to carry a casket. That's all it takes. And we don't have to check in every day. We don't have to talk every day, but I need to know that when I call, my friends are there. So I appreciate you making that distinction. One, of who you were and who you are now. So you brought it up, man. So we'll go there. We'll go there. We'll get hot and heavy first. Let's talk about mental health and one. Let's start here. Let's go here. How are your habits?
How are my habits? I'm very structured for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. but I'm able to manage them through the things that I'm in control of, right? So if I focus, or if my focus is on the things that I can control over the things that I can't, then it's a lot easier for me to kind of like navigate the anxieties than to get stuck in them. So like I lay my clothes out the night before. I make sure my bag is packed the night before. My food is ready to go in the morning. My coffee is ready to go. I know my driving route. I know my to-do list for the day. I know what the top three things on that to-do list are to get done. I know,
Yeah.
the conversations I need to have, the people I need to talk to. I know I need to read every day. I know I need to write every day. So these are things that for me over time have just become non-negotiables. But in the beginning, it was like a fight to make that happen, because it would be like, I'm trying to live my regular life. And then it's like, well, I need to check this box too. I need to make sure I'm writing. I need to make sure I'm doing this. And then it just turned into that checking the box instead of being present in it. So that's something that has I've been working on a lot, is just being more present. But one of the ways that I'm able to do that is through structuring, my day to day.
Yeah. So isn't it? It's interesting, man, that like the things that make us feel better quite often feel like work, but then when we don't do them, we're like, we feel like shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always kind of curious about that. It's kind of like the Saturday thing. Like Elliot and I have talked about this before. Like if you know that waking up early and doing these things makes you feel good, but then on Saturday you're like, you know what? I should sleep in a little bit, and you feel like it's some kind of reward, and it does the exact opposite, right?
Yep.
And so it's an interesting thing. But man, going back to the whole mental health piece, man, like I know from our personal conversations and everything else, like what as a mental health advocate, man, what does that mean for you right now? Like what are you doing? I've seen some of the stuff you've talked about before, we've talked about in the past. And I know what your goal is for the year. So maybe start there and work backwards.
So what I'm currently doing is, my end goal is to ultimately be my own boss. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what you mean? Say that and then work backwards
No,
here.
I was talking about like when we talk about like opening up
Oh,
and being
got
more
you.
of an open book in regards to mental health.
So for me, I can only speak off of my experiences in life, and my experiences are going to be, you know, fit a certain mold, right? But transparency has been the biggest thing that I've found that through advocacy, it's forced me to be transparent with my own story. It's forced me to kind of own it in a way where it's like, if I'm going to sit there and tell you that you don't have to be defined by something that's happened to you, I need to do the same thing for myself. If I'm going to tell you that you need to forgive yourself, I'm going to have to do that same thing for me, because you can't speak from a place of advocacy, in my opinion, without that transparency, because then it's just words, right? And there's enough people in this
Yeah.
world just saying shit to say it, because people are looking to grab the keywords and the fancy things and to get quick, like fix it quick type of deal. And I'm much more of the don't put a band-aid on a cut that needs stitches. So like I don't mind getting messy and ugly, because sometimes it's necessary to heal, right? Like you can't just touch it.
Yeah.
Sometimes like, and for me, I did that a lot, right? Like I said, I worked with a lot of different types of veterans, in the beginning, where I'm working with those dudes getting out of prison and, coming off the streets and addicts and stuff. Like, it was easy for me to be like, well, I'm a vet, but I'm not like them. Right. But the more that I was around them and I saw the tendencies, I was like, no, I am like them. It just manifests differently. Right. And then I like clean
Yeah.
myself up a little bit, and I get cleaned up, and I'm like, see, I'm out of that. And I start working in like veteran career development. So now I'm standing up in front of people and I'm saying, this is what you need to do to sell yourself. This is how you need to sell your service. This is how you need to blah, 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 blah. And now I'm being seen as a different type of vet, like a polished vet who's made it through, and like, and all this stuff, but I still got that ugliness inside of me that I could feel. So I'm like, ugh, like this doesn't feel good either. And then I move into the outreach side, working with the post 9/11 vets, specifically looking for people with PTSD who've been to Iraq and Afghanistan and their family members, and just getting them to get out in a community, talk to each other, be around each other. And my own goal with that was to make sure that that group connected, that they felt empowered and safe, and to make sure like no one, beat anyone up and everyone was being respectful of each other pretty much. But through that process, that was the one that put me in the position where it was like, all right, man, now you're like, this is your group. You've been to Iraq and you're a post 9/11 veteran, and these people are all your age and they're all looking to you for help. So how much longer can you keep stuffing this shit down before it has to be addressed and brought out? So that put me in a position where, like, I used to go and speak at one of the mental health wards that was the same ward that I was in a different state. So is it more impactful of me to be able to now come up there and say, hey guys, I came up here and bought a bunch of pizzas, not to just hang out with you, but to tell you that I tried to kill myself before and it got me sitting exactly where you are right now. And 8 years later, I'm telling you, on the other side of the table, there's a way out of it. Right? So I could go up there and do that and be raw and real, or I could be that polished dude trying to bullshit these guys. But for me, it's like, life isn't a game. And when you're dealing with and it's not a game to play with that whole, like, I want to kill myself, I don't want to kill myself, because this ain't, using a video game reference, there is no restart. It's over. And then your pain just gets transferred to another person. Exactly. So I took that really serious, because one of the biggest motivators for me was I didn't want the people that I love to feel like they weren't enough to keep me around when it had nothing to do with them in the first place, where it was like, man, you know how fucking selfish you are for thinking like that? So I took that stuff real serious. And because of that, it forced me to be transparent, because I've always looked at myself as a leader. Like, I've never been the type of person who, like, if we're in a room of people and they're like, I need someone's help, I'm not the dude who's like, well, tell me what we're doing after. Okay, let's go. So for me, like, I was always looking, when I was hurting, I was always looking for someone to put the hand up and help me. Unfortunately, I didn't really get that, and I'm thankful that I had the support that I had at the time to help me with it. But now I can be that person for someone. And now, not just veterans, you know what I mean, with people, because we all deal with shit. Everyone has stuff. Everyone's got family stuff. Everyone's got, like, this ain't the trauma Olympics. So, like, let's talk about it. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah. There's a part of that, and you alluded to it earlier. There's a part of that interesting process too that happens when you start to advocate for, or when you start to speak on, or you try to support others with something that you have a shared experience with. I think one of the most fascinating things about that is, I don't believe you don't have to be totally, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm going to use the word fixed. I don't mean fixed, but you don't have to be totally through that thing in order to then begin trying to support others in it, because that's when there's some real gnarly growth for yourself that can happen once you start advocating about these things towards others. So once you go from teacher or once you go from student to teacher, or whatever the case may be, that's kind of that next unlock of, like, your own self-development and growth as well.
That's a gym. That's a gym and a half, because, and Drew, you can tell me from your experience. For me, that's exactly the thing. I started speaking before I was done being hurt. Right? Like,
same.
I call it digging out. I was still in a 12-foot ditch, like, trying to dig out, but I was like, hey, I'm trying to just tell people I made it 1 foot. This is how I made it 1 foot. And so I think that's a huge thing to say that I didn't even recognize, man. Like, I think every time you make it 1 foot or whatever, it's kind of like we go back to the shiny toy thing. Like, right, you want to tell people about your toy. You're like, hey man, I got this cool toy. You should see it. That way you don't end up over here. And there's also something to the fact that, like, there's something to helping that gives you, like you said earlier, Drew. It gives you puts a little deposit in your fucking bucket, right? Like you get a little. I help that dude. And people argue about the semantics of like if you're helping for yourself or you're helping, and I don't think it matters because I think we have this saying we've been talking about for a while where it's like how things start isn't how it always ends. Like the reason why you start something isn't the reason why you end it, right? Like it's a reason, like they say, breakups make bodybuilders, right? Like you started for that reason, but what you ended with was something else.
Well, and if you're the type of person who finds yourself predisposed to leadership roles, right? So let's flesh out that digging out metaphor a little bit. If there's a bunch of us that are in a hole and you start digging out and you look back and see me still down at the bottom, but you can say, hey, start by reaching up and putting your hand here. Okay, now I've got a handhold.
Yeah.
And now you go up a little bit more. So the thing that drives you and continues to motivate you, though, to keep digging out is the fact that I'm now following you, that I'm now behind you, that I'm coming up behind you because you're showing me the way to go. So now you've taken on a level of responsibility, chosen responsibility of I'm going to get us out of this hole, or I'm going to work to show you where to put your feet and hands as we try to climb this.
Drew, let me ask you this based on what he just said. How often on team or just in general were you more concerned with letting everybody else down more than letting yourself down?
Every single time. I was more concerned about my teammates than myself and doing anything I could to help make sure that they had the things that they need, right? It was team gear, buddy gear, myself, right? That's just the way.
I say
that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, but I think that's what he's saying too. Like again, like Elliot, thank you for like illuminating it in a different way. Like, it's over here just over here.
Well, it's one of those
leading the way.
You said something too, and you said a lot of times people like split in the hairs on like, are you helping for yourself? Or are you helping with others? And my question to people who think like that would be, what does it matter if you're not helping at all? You know what I mean? Like, why are we going to split hairs if you're not even doing it? What does it matter? Yeah. What does it matter to you how I do it? You know what I mean? Like, but I just use it in the context of like, we're so quick to, just like instead of going, just go. Like we're so quick to dissect like, well, I can't because of this or that or this or right. Like, what does it matter why I'm helping if I just help and then we can figure it out? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why a lot of times like we get so caught up in that. And I hope that that's something that I'm still working on it. I'm still working on breaking it. Like go ahead.
It's the cheap seats, man. It's the cheap seats. And let's be real, like not that any of us are immune to it, but like complaining is the easiest form of communication there is.
Absolutely. Bitching and complaining about
least
stuff.
valuable.
So it's real easy to be like, And it's also easy, like, especially depending on where you are in your life. If you don't like your life, if you're not actively like owning your life, you're not actively owning your time. It's really easy to point the finger and be like, yeah, but you're not doing this for the right reasons. And I think your response is perfect, man. Well, you're not doing it at all. So it's like, those are situations where I don't want to pay attention to, and I try and tell people to not pay attention to those people. And I'm not sure why they garner so much attention, but
I would say something to that as probably somebody who's fallen victim to that before. I think the change that happened for me is once I made the choice, instead of just having opinions about why someone else is doing something, to have the, whatever you want to call it, belief, self-efficacy, whatever, to be like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it then. Or I'll help them. Or I'll contribute is maybe the better phrasing. Instead of being like, oh, man, that's grimy, or you're just ripping people off, or you're just whatever, all that kind of stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, if you have so many opinions of it, me talking to myself, then probably the better use of this energy is to figure out how to do it in a way, not that's better or whatever, but in a way that's different or that you feel as though is effective.
Dude, I think if you get in a fight to prove it, you're better.
Right.
constructive versus destructive,
All
right?
right.
Are we gonna choose to be constructive or destructive with our thoughts and actions?
Right.
Yeah. So as you're going through all this stuff, man, you're talking to vets and everything else. Did you have a collection of moments that just built up, or did you have an aha moment post suicide attempt, or what was your moment where you had to change and you knew, like, without a doubt that there had to be a big shift?
I knew, dude, this is so. I knew that the second that, so I was admitted into the hospital when I was still on active duty, like a psych ward. And I was admitted at like 1:30 in the morning. So like no one's up. I don't see anyone. They just kind of like shuttle me in, you know, suicide watch. Someone's coming to the room every 15 minutes, like all this other crap. And I wake up the next morning, wake up. I didn't sleep. So I'm like fried, frazzled, fight or flight, don't know where I'm at, like super punchy. And they want me to go have breakfast with all the other dudes who are there. And there's like 16 of them. So enough to fill like a table where like it was a big, long enough table that there was enough dudes down the side and someone at the very end where it was maybe like 12 feet. So the whole table's full of people. And I stood up and they wanted me to introduce myself. And as soon as I stood up, I said, I said my name and I said, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. And just started bawling, crying. And every single dude at that table came up around me and just hugged me. And right there was like, I don't know why I'm alive, but this is way too powerful to not be for something. So like, you got to figure it out. And I called my wife from the hospital and was like, this was in December. We got married in November. So we had been married for a month. And I'm like, hey, I'm admitted into a hospital. She's in Hawaii. I'm in Oregon. I'm admitted into a hospital. They ended up bringing me to Madigan at JBLM, right? So I'm over there.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I'm stuck in the hospital. I don't know when I'm going to get out of here. My career's over. I don't know what we're going to do. And she just said, we got it. Don't worry. And I knew she was like, when she hung up the phone, like I knew she was like, what the F? But she always believed in me. And like that combination of like those dudes, like me, like I've always prided myself on being like a strong guy. Like I got strong blood in me. My grandfather survived the Holocaust, came over here, made a life for himself. Like all his grandkids have college degrees. Like in the grand scheme of things, like I minimize my own suffering because of those things, right? But through that minimization, I internalized a lot of it. And to be at a position where like I've always carried myself with strength and to be in front of like that many men and strangers and just completely break. Because I wish I did that in front of my teammates before all this happened because they kept asking me what was going on and I deny, make counter accusations, right? Because you asked me a question earlier. Were you worried about your guys or yourself more? I left my team voluntarily because I felt like I was such a risk that I was going to get someone hurt or killed because I wasn't on my A game. And instead of just saying that to my team leader, I made up excuses of why I was done and why I didn't need it and blah, 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 and just pushed everyone away from me. Right.
Yeah.
And as much as I can say, like, I wish I did that then, like, I needed that moment with those strangers to break because I couldn't be tough because at the time I thought toughness was physical, but I was learning that toughness is mental. Right. I was broken to my core, dude, and had to like rebuild the thought of who I was and what I am. And like, that's been the purpose since then. Like, cause to me, that career, like that was dead and that guy died with it. The lessons didn't.
Yeah.
But now it's up to me to make purpose out of all of that. You know what I mean? And that's just what I'm trying to do. Like, I don't think I have it all figured out by a long shot, but I know how to be me. I know who I am, and I know everyone else in this world is taken. So I'm the only person I can be, and I think I'm pretty fucking cool. And it's taken me a long time to even say I love myself. I had to walk.
Yeah.
I used to write a sticky note on my mirror every day. I'd have to walk by it and read where it said, "I love you. You're worth it." And I had to say that stuff to myself, and that was so freaking hard to do. Where I would do it, and I'd be like, "You're a pussy. You're an idiot. Like this is stupid." And now I think about it, it's like, because you didn't believe it, dude. Like, no wonder why you wanted to end
Yeah.
yourself. You didn't even know who you were. You know what I mean? And like now life is freaking rad. Like I love it. Like, does it still have its ups and downs and things that are annoying? Of course, but like, dude, the best bad day is still better than the dead day because then I don't get to do any more of this awesome stuff. You know, I don't get to try to figure it
Yeah.
out and learn new things.
Yeah. I appreciate that so much. And um, you and I have talked extensively about this whole subject. Um, but you said something in there that I think is key, right? Our stories are what they are. They can't be rewritten, and they happen exactly how they're supposed to happen, right? And so I think that's a key thing that people often get hung up on, including when they're in that cycle of
Mm-hmm.
like I think when you're depressed or you're fucked up or whatever you want to call it, you're trying to dig out. You do this thing where you're like you're going back and you're looking and you're trying to find the turn that you missed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, well, if I would have zigged instead of zagged, if I would have went left instead of right, and then at the end of the day, I think like one of the things to happen is just to accept,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then from accepting, you can kind of move forward or whatever. But anyways,
Well, it's that same idea, right? There's no point in going back and looking at the map of where you were and figuring out, kind of to your point about where you missed the turn. You missed it.
Yeah.
Like, we're here now,
yeah,
so we can either figure out how to get where we're going or where we want to go. Because even if you figure out it, even if you're like, oh shit, I should have turned left on I-95, it doesn't fucking matter now because you blew past it. So we're here. So what's the route back?
it's interesting you say that though, man. I'll be completely honest with you. Like, I remember the point in which I finally broke. Right, I was alone. There was no one there, and I just came unhinged. like I laugh about it now because I remember thinking like if somebody walked in on me, they'd be like, "Yo, this dude is gone." But I also remember like at the end of it, I was like, "Oh, this had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to fuck up, I had to get called out, I had to have all the things happen, and then end up exactly where I was, so I could be like, oh shit, like And then you hit another one that's I think is key, man. Like you don't know who you are. Like you know yourself as yeah,
Right.
but you know yourself as like small. It's almost like you're like playing multiple characters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it was like I was this guy at work, and then I was another guy somewhere else, and that could be multiple things. But anyways, no, I appreciate that, man. So here's the deal. You said something that I wanted to illuminate or kind of go into, and I think this is the most important part of what we're talking about. How you built what you have now, and kind of where that started, and where it's going. I guess, man, that's probably a good thing to ask is where it's going. But like how you got here, because I think a lot of guys, when you say shit like, because I tell people all the time, man, my life is dope. My life is dope now, and I really mean it. And I think people think you're joking, but I think once you've had like a low that's that low, the building back can be interesting, but it's also a place like there's no guide. There's no, there is no. It's the thing that you said, right? You're looking for somebody to hold the hand up and be like, "Yo, follow me." And it doesn't exist. So now that we're here and we got you here, like hold your hand up and tell me some things.
I think for me, like when because I had to again make the conscious choice to, okay, I'm gonna live. I'm gonna see this thing through. And when I did that, I made the choice of, well, I'm just gonna do the things that make me happy. Like my wife gave me the luxury of when I got out of the military, the way that I got out of the military. She's like, "You have the GI Bill. We don't have kids. We just got married. I run a business. Go to school. Go to school. Figure it out, right? Go do things you love and go to school." So I was, and I understand that that's a unique situation for myself that a lot of veterans don't find themselves in. But I was given this opportunity to kind of explore, right? And at the time, it was okay. Well, like go to school. I went to school for mental health because I knew I was messed up. So selfishly, I was like, well, if I learn about this stuff, maybe I can try to figure it out. And then selfishly, also, I'll have a degree to fall back on. But my passion was always in training. I was always involved in training, and I took a job as a starting strength coach at a CrossFit gym. And that's what was always kind of like the back pocket thing. And I graduated school and did all that stuff that, you check the boxes like you're supposed to do, and work my way up into these positions. And through COVID, I'm working in veteran mental health still. And I told my wife one day, I said, I'm not happy. Like, I'm just not happy. Like, I get awards like for winning employee of the year and like bonuses and all this other shit that people think should be like, wow, like markers that say you're doing a good job. And I was like, I don't feel fulfillment in my soul. Like, this doesn't feel like what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I know I'm helping, but it's not enough. And I always, like I said, stayed current with the training and everything. So I said to her, I said, you think that I could, like, well, would you be opposed to me going full in on fitness? And dude, this is where my wife is such a G. She's like, about time. You know what I mean? It's not like, I don't know. Like, my wife, like, she believes, like, that's one thing I'll say. Like, my wife believes in me, and I needed that a lot at a lot of times because I didn't believe in myself. But like, hearing her say that, it's like, all right, let's go. So I same thing. Went from a big peg on the ladder, humble yourself, start over again. Boom, right down to the bottom. Frick, this sucks. Like, grinding on the floor of a gym, like trying to figure this stuff out. Still doing it, going to school to I have an education in mental health, but now I also need an education to back up what I am saying as a professional. So I go get a postgraduate certificate in strength conditioning, get my CSCS, boom, find a job with the Marine Corps. Hey, this is right up the street. Like, I'm going to give it a shot. Let me just throw my name in the hat. Like, I don't know if I'm going to get it or not, but I don't think there's anyone who's better suited on this island to train Marines than me. So let's go. Take the shot. Here we are. Humble myself again. Entry level position. Shit. All right. Work my way up again. And within, a little bit of time of being there, a little over a year, now I'm running their program. So it's like, you can't be afraid to start over. You cannot put timelines on yourselves that other people put on there. Like, I should be here at this age. I should have this at this age. Says who? Says who? Who says you can't reinvent yourself? Who says you can't start over? Who says because the choices that you made when you were 20 or 25 years old, you need to stick with and be miserable and suffer for the rest of your life because you are too afraid of being a little bit of uncomfortable or dealing with a little bit of discomfort to try to do something else. And, call it a little bit of stubbornness, a little bit of luck, but I've never been afraid to just try things and then start over. And I've always just kind of believed that I've always had a personality where I can connect with people. And the more that I've learned how to share myself with people, the more opportunities kind of have opened up for me. And not just as a professional, but as a human being, right? Because my goal isn't to like have a job and then who I am. My job is this is who I am and this is what I do. Like, no parameters around it. Like, this is who I am at work. This is who I am with this. Like, I don't want any of that. So like, the more I share, the more I put out, the more I get to get all these great things, right? But like, you can't ask for shit and sit on the sidelines. Like, you got to get in the game, man. Like, and in that game, you might get rocked, but you got to get back up. Eventually you'll score a touchdown. You'll get points on the board, but keep racking up those wins. Like, you can't be afraid of putting yourself out there, especially if you want something. If you want it, you got to prove it because talk is cheap and there's enough talkers in the world.
Yeah. Dude, I love it. I'm going to keep saying that every time you go on a roll, it gets me.
I know, I go on rants too. I'm sorry.
Right.
No, man, do it. That's what we're here for.
I have a follow-up question. With when you said learn, you said I think you said learn to share about myself or learn to talk about myself. What did you learn to help you feel more comfortable doing that?
I think when I started to realize, because like when you look at me, like a lot of times, like I'll get from people, they don't expect me to talk or speak the way that I look. I'm 5'7". I'm a 200-pound guy. I'm head to toe covered in tattoos, like minus like my stomach and my neck. Like, they hear about my background, they hear about all this stuff, but then I start talking about feelings and everything, and it throws people off. But I think when I realized that using that don't judge a book by its cover, and like using that, like weaponizing that in a sense, instead of like using it as a way to be like, well, people misjudge me and they think I'm this way, so I'm just going to be this way and be closed off to them. When I started being the one to break the ice, and it made other people like, okay. And then it was like, oh, wow, like as uncomfortable as it is for me, I'll take a little bit of like delayed, like I'll deal with discomfort for that delayed gratification of like getting to know people on a deeper level. Cause I do not like surface conversation. I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want to talk about whatever, fill in the generic thing. Like if my time is valuable, and I look at it that way because I know I'm living on borrowed time now because I didn't want to live before. So my time is the most valuable currency I have. So if I give that, I want it to be meaningful. And I think when I realized there was value in words and then expression through like positive expression of emotion, not meaning like always being positive, but like having control of your emotions and being able to express them in a constructive way, that is what showed me that I could build things, because I saw so many people being destructive with their words that I didn't want to do that, right? But that's a default. It's easy to be angry. It's easy to be upset. It's easy to be resentful. It's hard to be kind. It's hard to be nice. It's hard to share about the dark spaces that we don't necessarily feel good or are proud about. But that's not a special case to us. We all have that. So if I sit here and right away I say, here's mine, and I put it on the table, I just gave you guys permission to do the same exact thing. But coming from a guy who looks like me, it seems for whatever reason, it's reciprocated, because the stereotype is that I should be some sort of machine who doesn't have emotions, who compartmentalizes everything and just looks at tasking the way that like a Terminator would, and just destroy shit and just keep knocking it off and driving forward, when it's like, no, man, I feel just as much everything and anything that every other human being does too. And that's the thing. We're not unique. As unique as we think we are, we're not. And the more that we can share that, we realize that like we don't have to like hold on to our trauma or pain like it's this special, unique thing to us, right? Doesn't mean you have to share it all and go around like waving it and screaming it to everyone, but like you guys just said, find a couple good dudes. The time that I'm at Hans, that was one good dude. That was one good dude, and that was one good dude enough. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be as big as we try to make it in our heads. It's just like you gotta look. There's wins everywhere. Just, are you choosing to look at them or not?
Man. So you said three things I think that matter, man. Like you said way more than three, but there's three big ones in here that matter, and that's one, looking for the wins. I think two, it's finding the people that to connect you, and then three, it's purpose. And purpose doesn't have to be huge, and purpose doesn't have to stay like your purpose now doesn't have to be your purpose tomorrow, right? I think quite often with purposes and why and everything else, people want these like, I'm here to cure cancer, and it's like, dude, your purpose can be just to fall in love with your life. That's what it was for me. When I finally dug out, I was like, yo, my goal is to find a way to fall in love with my life every day. Right. And in so doing that, I found that other people were like, why is that guy on fire?
Right. It's infectious.
Yeah.
Well, you could also think about it this way too, right? You can, it's a slide. It can be a sliding scale. It can be, the purpose can be to be a person who helps find a cure for cancer. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, you don't have to be the person who cures cancer, which I think is also where that gets missed a lot, is like, my purpose is going to be, I'm going to do this thing that's going to, and we set this thing that is maybe a bit ethereal, rather than think, what do you contribute to the thing you're actually talking about?
Your goal doesn't have to be the revolutionary. Your goal can be to inspire the revolutionary.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So you said something before we got on here I wanted to talk about. And so there's this quote by a guy named Mike DeSanti, who wrote this great book called New Man Emerging. He he said the hardest journey a man makes is the 18 inches from his head to his heart. And so you said something about the fact that this year what you wanted to do is share your heart. So one, I want to know what that means to you, and two, um, how hard has it been to go from what I think I'll speak for you in this sense, like we never share, to now being the guy who shares, um, as an example.
Um, I think for me, sharing my heart just means like just putting my life out there, I guess, in a sense, because like I have a pretty big following on social media, right? That they see a lot of like just training stuff, like you know, what lifting related and everything. And I think that this role that I'm transitioning to in this new stage of my life is like it's calling me to not only just share my experiences with life, but just like I worked all those years in mental health. It had to be for something. I don't work in mental health anymore, but you, all three of us know fitness, anyone who works in fitness or nutrition, it's just as much psychological as it is about the physical, right? So how do I merge those 8 years and make that purpose merge into what I'm doing now? And that's only coming through I can express movement, and fitness is an expression of my physicality, right? My writing, my speaking is an expression of my emotional capabilities. And then not only that, just the willingness to go deep, right? Like I hope that you guys realize at this point, like I'm not afraid to go deep. And that's twofold. I am afraid to go deep because to play on this, like the hardest part for me has been when you put yourself out
Right.
there, there's criticism, right? There's a lot of criticism that comes with that. And there's a lot of people just hate because it's easy to hate. Like, look at this motherfucker trying to be positive over here. Fuck him. You know what I mean? Instead of just like, okay, dude, like if you took that same energy and made it positive, like I'm sure you'd have a different outlook. So like learning how to kind of callous myself to some of those things and realize that hurt people. And reality is, man, no one's lived my life but me. And I don't give a fuck what you think, because when I look at the mirror at the end of the day now, I'm happy with the man that I am, but I'm not satisfied with that man because I know the man I'm becoming is even better than this version of me. Like when I talk to you guys next year, I don't want it to be the same person. Like to me, if that's the case, I failed. So like the only way that sharing my heart is almost like a way that I'm like continuing to force myself to grow, because especially fitness related, everything's about strength and the way we can overcome and all the wins we have. Dude, what about all the losses we had to take to get that win? That's just as important to teach, because if you think you're always going to win, the second you get knocked on your fucking ass, you're looking for the way out. So like, I need to share the ways that I've suffered. I need to share the ways that I've struggled in the areas that I still struggle in now, because it's easy for me on the platform that I have to be like, oh, look at this cruise dude in Hawaii who's just swinging kettlebells and putting good music on it and just having a great old time. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be that human side of me, because with the way that the world is going right now, we're disconnecting. We have these tools that allow us to connect on such a level, but they're making us so stupid in the same context, right? So it's like, am I using it to be constructive or destructive? Because I could just keep putting up reels with music and whatever and not doing this stuff, but then I'm not growing. And if I'm not growing, I'm not being true to my mission. And that's what really drives me, is that internal motivation of like, dude, you have to make your life about purpose, and your purpose right now, the only good thing I've been blessed with is an ability to endure. I can take it. Doesn't mean I like it, but I can take it.
Yeah.
And call it being too dumb for your own good or what, but I just don't want to quit on myself. I don't like feeling regret. And even the little things I have in my life that I still regret, it eats at me. Not because I wish I could change it, but because I let a moment of weakness dictate and navigate certain areas of my life. And to me, that's a non-negotiable now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the difference between responding and reacting, right?
Mm-hmm.
I almost everything in my life that I'm ashamed of or that I'm not proud of has been a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there
Same.
are people that I spoke to, there are ways that I've
Yes.
acted, there are things that I've done that, and almost to a T, every single one of them is a reaction. Very
Mm-hmm.
rarely, and I don't even know if it's rarely. I don't think there is one where I responded where I'm like, I regret that,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's typically I measured and I knew like if I did this, this is exactly what should have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in saying that, man, it's like I think there's something to. You already alluded to it, man, but there's something to putting your dirt out in the sense of like, um, hey, man, it's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't. I'm not an advocate of the fact that like everybody is jacked up. Like Elliot and I have talked about this recently. Um, psychology.com, I think, is the bane of our existence. but 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 I do think that there is so much magic in groups of people, men, women, whatever, that get together, share, participate in like, hey man, I'm not doing so hot. I've told this story before, but like my pops, man, my pops is one of the he's one of the most content men I've ever met in my life, man. Like, the dude is just unflappable in my opinion. And I don't think it's an act because I've witnessed it for 40 years, right?
Just very committed to the bit at this
Yeah,
point.
he's selling it at this point. The guy is just he's so content and so like nothing really whatever. But I asked him, he was a tunnel rat in Vietnam, and so if you don't know what a tunnel rat, and like take some time and for the list people listening, take some time and look it up. It's pretty intense, right? And after my first trip downrange, he still didn't really talk to me about much. My second trip downrange, he started sharing stories, and I remember I asked him, I said, basically, why aren't you crazy? Like, why don't you have PTSD? And he told me that because he recognized he went home on leave. I'm probably butchering this story, but my goal is to get him on here. Anyways, he went home on leave or somewhere and he was trying to talk to people and no one understood. No one got it. He didn't have anybody to share or talk to. So then he went back home, or not back home, went back off of leave, back to active duty. And he was talking to guys and he was like, hey, man, y'all ever had some weird ass dreams? And everybody was like, yeah, I had them weird ass dreams too. And that was the thing that helped him through everything. Was the next umpteen million, because he did forever in the Army, umpteen million years of being around and in and through. And my dad's not one of those guys who doesn't talk. He talks about stuff, but it's just never in the 2023 version. So, and so I think dude, that's wild. That's wild. So with all that being said, digging out and you're here now, um, either a billboard to yourself or to somebody out there right now. What does the billboard say?
If you don't believe in yourself,
Yeah. Um, well, you said that, and it make me think about something. So let me ask you this: What's we'll go to your internal monologue. What do you say when shit gets
I just start counting. Count.
rough?
Mm-hmm. I count. That's it.
Yeah,
Like when you were talking about earlier, like the Jimi Hendrix, I just count 1, 2,
yeah,
3, 4, 5, 6, or I breathe.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Breathing's
And it
become
just,
mine.
yeah, I do a lot of breathing. I do a
That's a
lot of
good
breathing
one.
exercises. So, but I count because it's simple.
You can just
it's
do
simple.
it. You can just do it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dude, when I did that, I did for my 35th birthday, I did a 35-mile ruck march by myself, right? So woke up, my wife's like, what do you want to do for your birthday? I said, I think I'm going to do a 35-mile ruck. And I'm a postie, dude. We don't ruck march. Like, so I'm just like, I'm just going to do this thing because why not? I want to see if I can. So like, so not prepared. Wake up, step off at 6 a.m, finish at like 10:30 at night, but I finished. And literally, like I rode a roller coaster of emotion through that day. I spent the majority of the day by myself. My good buddy, who's out here now, who's still active duty, he finished like the last 6 miles with me, which literally he just like walked with a plate of pizza to like feed me as I was going. So like I got nothing to complain about because how lavish is that? I'm like just walking around and someone's holding a pizza for me. So like in all grand scheme of things, like life is good. Right. And then my wife, same thing. Wife's a G. She did the last 11 miles with me. But I had nowhere to go. Right. It gets to the point where I have nowhere to go except for miles. And you can't left foot, right foot anymore. And it's just like, well, I'll just count because eventually music gets annoying. People get annoying. The sun's annoying. Your feet hurt, like all this other shit. And it's like, well, you asked for this, dude. Right. So for me, it was always just kind of like counting simplified stuff. And it's like, well, get to 100 and then just start over again. And like, let's see how many times you can count to 100 and like kind of turn it into a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always get stuck with other things, but I like that, man. It's simple.
What do you do?
Well, because
it's always a variety of music for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a variety of music, unless it's complex tasks. And if it's tasks, then I'm usually I'm going, what next?
Yeah.
Because it's always a battle of you just want to win the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's all it is. Like, I don't know what's going to happen 10 steps from now.
Yeah.
And then especially in suffering, in suffering, my belief is, and we've talked about it before, like you make your world small.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like here, like I'll use a book reference, and there's a part in The Alchemist where the guy's talking about ruck marching. He's talking about marching. Mm-hmm. He said the reason why I like marching is because I can't get too far. I'm paraphrasing. I can't get too far forward, and I can't get too far behind me. I'm just mm-hmm. here. So when I'm here, I'm just thinking of what I'm doing. He's mm-hmm. like, it's kind of like when I'm eating. When I'm eating, I'm thinking about his eating. And I find that it's really hard if you're in the moment. And this isn't some like preachy hippie thing, like, right? But it's really hard if you're in the moment to be anything but what you are. Meaning you can be mm-hmm. in pain and not suffering.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. You can be in joy but not happy. Mm-hmm. Right. You're just there at that second. And if you can do that amongst suffering, then you're like, mm-hmm. you'll be okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, shit, I'm talking. Elliot over here is an ice bath every fucking day. So like,
I know you guys are gonna. I gotta figure out how I can get I gotta figure out how to get an ice bath in my 2-bedroom townhouse. There's not as much real estate out here.
Oh, dude, the one
so.
Yep, I was gonna say that one's
the one that Sam has. Maybe we can get them to mm-hmm. sponsor the whole show.
That'd be sick.
Sam is
That'd
also
be fun little giveaways.
He's a cool dude, man. You've introduced me just through this, my man. You've introduced me to two cool dudes through Sam and Elliot. So already this is a win for me.
Yeah, man. Quick note on Sam. Like Sam, I don't talk to Sam all the time, but every time I talk to him, without fail, he drops something on me that I think about for at least a week and a half. Mm-hmm. Like every time. Like, I posted it today about the Nick Saban quote, and it ties into what you were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. It takes what it takes. And it's interesting because when you were telling the story about having to go back into the dunk, right, and getting back in the mm-hmm. fuselage, it's one of those things where like there's all these emotions and things, and I've been there with some other stuff where I'm like, I don't want to do that shit again. Mm-hmm. but success, the choice to be successful was already made.
Mm-hmm.
So there were no other options. Even if I knew what to do, I'm getting up and I'm doing this again. Like, fuck.
So the ice bath thing, that's what that's become, which is I know I'm going to do it. So the amount of time I spend shitting around before getting in it when I don't want to do it because it's always cold and it's always uncomfortable has decreased significantly because there's never been a time that I've gone to do it and I've not done it. So why keep lying to myself and spending time pacing around outside being like, this is going to suck. It's going to suck. Yeah, it's going to fucking, of course. But let's just
we already know
cut
that.
to the front of the line and just get in. Yeah, I'm very aware of this. It's the data shows that this is never a time where I'm like, oh, that's nice. Now, I get there eventually after like a minute or two, but there's never a point where I'm like, oh, this is what a delight. No, it's always right up rip, like something that's uncomfortable. So, and it was just today's actually is a great example of that. It was cold as shit out and it was weird. Like it's the worst. Here's what I think it's the worst. It's not when it's quite frozen. But like today, the water was just starting to crystallize and it was really gnarly looking on the water on the tub. There were like these weird like ice spike crystals. So for whatever reason, that feels colder than when I have to like hammer off chunks of ice. And I saw that shit today and I was like, you son of a bitch. I'm like, this is gonna be a rough one. And then I was like, what are we doing? And I literally just like took my shirt off and just like got in. And then 3 minutes later, it's like that stuff we talk about. There's never a time that I've done it where afterwards I've been like, I wish I wouldn't have done that. No. Right. Every time after I do it, there's a sense of, yeah. And you know, we've made that analogy with a million things, right? Training or lifting or whatever, that any of that kind of shit. There's never a time when you're like, damn it, I shouldn't have. Like you're always at least at net neutral, if not positive. Right.
Yeah. I'm a professional strength conditioning coach. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of days I don't want to train. I do it anyways because I understand the benefit of it, right? And I think that for a lot of people, it's like setting those non-negotiables for yourself and then accepting too, like you just said, like accepting the fact that anything worth having is never going to come easy. And if it comes easy, is it really worth anything?
Right.
Right? Like,
well, and you're referencing something that you talked about earlier. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like with the guys, my group that I run, that Operation Restore group, I ended the call. I do a Sunday call with them and I ended it with them yesterday saying, I want you to go into this week looking for the opportunities to test your resolve and your toughness. Like, don't pray for an easy week. Don't ask for an easy week. Pray for a hard week. Pray for things to not go the way you want them to, because that's when you're going to see whether you really are growing or not. Right. And I think a lot of us, like, we want stuff to just, oh, I wish I had this. And then it just like appears. But it's like acceptance, whether it's healing or growing, acceptance is the first step. This is going to be tough. This is going to be challenging. But I'm not going to let that dictate my success. Right. And whether it's an ice bath or a training or experiences overseas or whatever it may be, it all kind of boils down to that, right? Or it should, because I like keeping things simple, dude, because the world's complicated enough, right? And like even with training, like we can make training super complicated or we can make it simple, which majority of people just need simple.
You said something
simple is not easy
that I think ties. Well, so to this point, right? So you said something earlier that I think ties into one of the things that we've started talking about, or one of the things that I know we plan to continue talking about, you know, the process of digging out and what does that look like? And early on when we were chatting, you talked about laying your clothes out at night, knowing what you're going to eat, all these things. So what you're doing is you're eliminating decisions you have to make, right? You're eliminating decisions that you have to make along the way. And I think that coming to terms, like, so it's like, you know, just to beat the ice bath thing, that horse to death, I know I'm going to do it. So once I've gotten past the point of pretending like I'm not going to, I can get that time back and I can spend that time, energy, and thought on something else. Like it's making everything efficient, not in like a Patrick Bateman, you know, American, you know, psycho way, but like making it efficient in a way where, right. Thank you. It's topical. It's making it something that, you know, it's happening. Like I'm gonna eat the way that I'm gonna eat right now because I'm following a nutrition plan or whatever. Like I'm gonna fucking do it. So rather than tomorrow me pretending and being like, maybe I won't, or like whatever the fuck. Like, no, you're gonna do it because that's what you want to do right now. And so let's take all that time, that cumulative time back from these arbitrary things that are decisions and put that energy towards something else. And I found that to be something that's been huge for me over the past months. I'll give you a good example. Another job I do, I found out I don't have to do it tomorrow. My first thought, rather than like, oh, cool, like day off, it was like, I was so excited to get to have the time to work on these other things that I'm excited about. So I did not view this thing like I had like an 8-hour day tomorrow that now is not happening. And so rather than being like, hell yeah, like free time, I was like, fuck yes, time that I get to play around and do stuff that excites me. And I'm 40 years old, man. This is a new feeling for me to be excited about having time back because I get to fill it with things that I know bring me fulfillment. And it's a wild journey. And I think kind of to your point of what you mentioned earlier, it truly is something that I think people, you have to experience some level of it for yourself before you feel it. Before you could be like, that's what he's talking about. That's what someone's talking about. Like that was it. Right. And whatever that means to them, right? It's going to mean different for me than it was for you or whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's just like strength is a relative term, right? Like strength, like what I define strength as could be different than what you guys define strength as. Same thing goes for those other things, right? Like whatever word we decide to use, it's just relative. It's gauged off of the person's experiences, right? Even in golf, they play with handicaps. So it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know, man. Like I think that, I think that you kind of hit the nail right on the head there with that thing. And I just feel like a lot of times, sorry, my mind just went blank. I have some memory stuff too, so I'm sorry about that. But no, I think that. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that you were just touching on a really good point there with the, and the way I was taking it was like just this like not comparison, right? Like we're so quick to kind of like compare like what this person has or what that person has or what this does or what that does, or this person's tough and they're tough because they did this and I'm not tough or I can't be because, and it's like, just stop the noise, right? And like, just quiet it for a second. And what do you hear inside? You know, because I think a lot of times we're like so jaded by we're constantly consuming almost to the point where you like people don't trust their own intuition anymore. You know, and like for me, these things that work for me, and like even the things you're saying that work for you, they work for us. They may not work for someone else, but how are you going to know unless you try? And if you're not even willing to try, I can't explain to you the feeling that I have by doing these things. Right? Kind of like to your point there, like you could try your best to explain it, but if you haven't experienced it yourself, you're not going to fully understand. You're not going to grasp it.
And I think this connects. We're going to make the sausage live a little bit.
Thank you, sir.
When you're talking about the idea about like what's tough mean, right? So as I was trying to figure out, as I was getting to know people like Hansei and other people that I've gotten to know who are physically strong people, that's my first impression of them. Obviously multi-layered and all that kind of good stuff. To go back to the son of a bitch ice bath again, I saw that thing that these people all kind of dabbled in as being a point of entry for me, that I could show that I could do something hard. So I almost became kind of fucking stubborn about it, that I was like, my physical strength isn't there, but nobody likes doing this. And I see some of these people who don't even want to mess with this. So I can fuck with this right off the bat. This requires no whatever. It's just dealing with shit. And there's some metaphor there, I think. I don't know what it is, but it's some version of just being like, this is a point of entry for me to start to show myself that I'm strong. I don't even know what that means. It's like what you're saying. I don't even know what strong means, but it's whatever.
No, it makes you make a valid point, man. You make a good point about a bunch of things. I think kind of wrapped into one. Like you, there is something to just physical suffering, right? I think everybody kind of realizes that. Like there's a reason why we respect people who, there's a reason why we respect people who do these things that are strenuous and that we know to be hard. If you talk to the average person who's like, there's a whole gamut of people who aren't initiated to why ice baths are a thing, right? If you're not in the strength and conditioning community and you're not in that like weird biohacking community, if you're like, yeah, let's go do an ice bath, people would be like, yo, like what's wrong with you, right? And so, yeah, exactly. when you put it out, like one of the things I love about it, right, and I love about a lot of the things is I'm in complete control.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what like the thing I measure with an ice bath is how long it takes me to go from to cool. No big deal. And I think that there's something there you're saying, Elliot, because like not everybody is going to be able to squat. I think 400 pounds is reasonable for most men to squat or whatever with time. But I mean, not everybody's going to squat 700 and 800 pounds. Not everybody's going to fucking see these Jamal Browner deadlift numbers. But there are things that you can encounter and take on that are physically hard, that are challenging, that gets you to kind of you laying another brick down. You laying another brick down to the wall, whether that is physical, mental, or whatever kind of way you want to label toughness and strength. You know, for me personally, the way I look at toughness and strength is it is almost everything with me is tied into resilience. And how because I'm a big like I'm not going to get it right the first time. I'm that guy, right? I'm just like we're going to fuck this up. But the second time, I'm going to give you hell. Right? And then the third time, and that's how I look at everything. So if it's toughness to me is more about that. Like, can I take this lick and then be like, all right, well, I'm gonna get up and do this again. So I don't know. There's something there. I'm not sure exactly what it is or how to.
Yeah, I know what it is either. It's well, and I think maybe I'll try and put a pin on it. It's the idea about if you're trying to find a way to feel like you're a part of something, if you're trying to figure out a way to feel connected with something, there is a point of entry that you can find for yourself. Yes. Whatever that is. You know, whatever.
There it is.
It's scalable.
Whether it's ice bath,
jiu-jitsu,
wrestling, boxing, weightlifting, there's something out there for everyone, right? But you can still kind of get those experiences. But one thing to think about with that too, and because I think tough, like right away, like even when we said the word tough, like there's personas and stereotypes that go to toughness, right? And like for me, for a long time, I wanted to be seen as a tough guy, and now that's like the last thing I want to be seen as. I want to be seen as a nice, like a good guy, like a dependable guy, a resilient guy, right? So that definition of toughness as I've aged, like I'm not old, but it's changed over time, or my views of toughness, because even hard work, like you can work really hard, but hard work pointed in the wrong direction won't get you there any faster, right? So it's like one of those things where it's like tough is good, but it's an attribute just like anything else, where it's like almost if you're too tough or like that stigmatized toughness, it's not going to get you where you're trying to go, right? So it's like really being able to tie into those things, because I don't think that we can just be like toughness isn't like a physical thing. It's much more what you were saying, Hanse, with like the resiliency. It's a mental thing, right? Like I know tough dudes who look like they could fight their way out of a wet paper bag, and then I know dudes who look like the Hulk who you smash their face and they're gonna crumble. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, and when you're in those, and like if anyone hasn't seen that before, do judo or jujitsu, and your experience will drastically change. but like that's
Yeah.
a changer, right? That's a view changer. So just like with the ice baths, like put yourself in situations where you are forced to think outside of what confines you've already put yourself in.
Well, so I'm thinking about this because we're talking a lot about physical stuff. And one of the things I often lean on is like when I hear people or like I'm coaching or I'm challenging somebody and like if you're always doing physical things, my thing is like, what's the what's the mental or emotional thing you need to do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're timid, maybe it's to speak in front of a group. If you're never flexing your intellectual muscle, maybe it's you need to read 10 books on this niche category. Um, and so that's one of the things. But one of the things, like as we're talking, two things dawned on me. One, I don't know when tough or toughness is ever really a part of my thought process or patterns. Like, I don't think I ever. Maybe if we're talking about fights, is probably the only time it really. I don't ever think, yeah, this is going to be tough, or I'm going to be tough, or it's just not a part of my internal monologue. Like,
You mean
ever.
think about it in terms of saying to yourself, I have to be tough?
Yeah, or in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Like even when I was going through everything in the military, I've never once yeah, tough. But I've also never considered myself tough either.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've always said that I'm really good at suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That's the closest thing I've ever said to probably that. Is like I'm real good at suffering. No other real redeeming quality. But
The ability to endure.
yeah.
No, I think, and I think there's a lot to that. There's a lot to, I think, because I guess which would you pick if you could only be described as one? What would you pick? Would
I only know one way.
right? So I mean, but I'm saying I would rather choose the ability to endure than someone to be like he's tough. Like if you're going to describe me, if it's got to be one of the two,
Yeah.
cool. Because I'll outlast your toughness if this is what we're going for here.
So here's a second thought too, man. Like as I get older and I think about toughness and vulnerability and resilience and all of these things, right? The older I get, if I really had to think about like what is tough or what does it look like, it's being able to know one here, it's emotional control
Mm-hmm.
and understanding vulnerability, humility, um, and kind of that whole line that we're talking about here, right? Because I think a truly tough man, right? I'll go there. Understands that there's a point of emotional control, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to run around here and just blab all the time about all my downs and hardships and fucking whatever. But I have my friends, my lover, my whatever that I confide in and say, here's all my
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever that means is to you. But it's also being able to take that same energy and not let it consume you.
Mm-hmm.
And you use it to consume or to create or whatever that is for you. So
it's being aware, because we've talked about it before with like the belly, right? It's you don't walk around all the time showing your belly, but you have to be aware that you have a belly, right? It's being
like that.
Being aware that you have a belly, that it works on a lot of levels. but knowing the value of when to show your belly and being aware that you also have a belly, right? So to see our video game thing through, every boss in a video game has a weak point, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you got to fire the arrow, or that's where you got to shoot the fireball, or whatever it is. They have that part on their armor that you can get through. You have that too. I have that too. We all have that. Mm-hmm. And are you aware of that, or do you walk around pretending like you don't?
Well, I think a lot too, like with that toughness, like I think where I was trying to go with it, because I know I lost my train of thought and then just kind of like brought everyone on this random, conversation, but I'm really enjoying it. So this is really fun. But like toughness, right? Like going back to that stereotype of toughness, I feel like a lot of like growing up, like what were the movies you watched? Like Arnold, Rocky, like all these things, right? And like we
Sure.
have these views, and then like as I've gotten older, like my perception of what I thought was tough from what I consumed when I was younger, like formed that like, oh, I need to be this kind of way. And then as I've gotten older and gained my experiences, it's like to me, toughness is like as a man, me, toughness is being vulnerable, telling people I love them, letting my friends know I appreciate them. Like, and that's kind of the message. I guess that's where I was going with it. Like, that's the message I want other men to see.
Yeah.
Like, that's why when you came to the powerlifting meet with like and met me, I didn't want to be the dude up against the wall. Like, who's this? I wanted to be like, what's up, bro? Like, we're here to have fun. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, to me, like, I think that that's how I've kind of, as I've gotten older, started to define that toughness as like going against whatever that like social stereotype or social norm of like what a tough guy is. Cause I don't consider myself tough, dude. I cry a lot. I'm an emotional dude. I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like, I love watching romantic comedies with my wife. And like, I have a fluffy little Pomeranian dog. Like, all these things where people would be like, what? But I'm like, I laugh because I'm like, oh, it's balanced. Like when my neighbors see me walking my dog and I'm like covered in tattoos and they see this fluffy little like toy dog and they're like, I would not expect this. I'm like, well, this is what's called balance. This is balance in life. Right.
Yeah,
And like
it's
my
fun to
little
confuse
dog's like
people.
yeah. And like, I think for me, like that's been a big thing. Like as far as going back to that sharing the heart, that's another way I can share my heart is by like through that transparency and vulnerability and like redefining toughness by doing those things compared to because when we all said tough and we did that round robin, we all kind of said it in a way of like tough guy, and I don't think any of us like believe in that at all.
No,
You know what I
that's
mean?
kind of why I
So
went back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
that's kind of why I went back and was saying is because like as I think about what I deem to be tough now, it goes to a whole person concept,
mm-hmm.
the whole man concept, right? Like I
Yep.
don't want, even now, like raising two boys, man, right? Like, um, I want my boys to understand that there's a whole man concept in there. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want them to run around here flailing in their emotions, but I also don't want them to not be able to say, "Hey, dad,
Yeah.
hey, friend, whatever. This is what's going on."
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's extremely important that you're able to do that because I mean, even from where we've come from and the conversations that we've had, right? So much of what we had to go through had to do with the fact that we were unable to express emotions, unable to be
Mm-hmm.
honest and open with ourselves first,
Mm-hmm.
let alone anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think
Well,
You want
that's a big deal.
yeah, that's the way I think about it. Is it's not going to matter for shit how much I can deadlift when my soon-to-be teenage daughter comes to me for the first time and tells me she got her period. Like, what the fuck? Like, that just
mm-hmm.
that's cool, man. So what's like, cause that's not being that and being prepared and being there for that moment and being able to be
Right.
supportive and all those kinds of things. That doesn't have shit to do with how much I love swinging a mace around
Right.
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, so this
Yeah.
idea about what that means is that's what it is.
There takes a level of strength and toughness to handle people's true trauma and ability
Right.
and issues, right? And I think that's maybe for me, that's where I know where I'm getting to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and Drew, I know like you're a lot like I am in the sense of like when people are fucked up, like you're going to answer the call, and answering the call that takes a lot of oomph, and it'll take a lot of oomph out of you,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I think that's also like a measure of what we're trying to talk about here. But anyways,
Filling the cup, right? You got to keep your cup full. If you're
yeah,
pouring into other people, you got to fill yourself.
exactly. Dude, we're gonna get ready to land this plane here in a minute. We're not just yet, but we're start thinking about some wrapping it up. But
Okay.
one of the things I do want to kind of say out loud, and we talked about it on the phone, but to say it to people who listen, we're gonna be doing a unnamed or unnumbered, not unnamed, unnumbered series on mental health called Digging Out, and you're gonna help us with that piece. So it's I think it's actually 10 pieces right now.
Mm-hmm.
and I will call it a microcast for now. Who knows? It's probably going to end up being long, but
No, these are
Can't
always
wait.
real. That 15-minute intro
yeah,
nailed it for me.
yeah. So, so I think it's important as some people here who have been around trauma, who've been around our own traumas and own, for me, suicide attempt, the whole thing. I think it's important to kind of put that out there. And it's not that I want it to be a step by step guide or like, here, do this, because I'm not a shrink. But what I am is a dude who's got some anecdotes, some experience, and I want to share that because, as we've kind of stated through this whole thing, it's important. And a lot of times when you're fucked up, what you're doing is you're looking around. Like, I always liken it to falling off a cliff. If you ever seen like those slow motion people falling off, they're trying to grab
something.
And so often, dude, that's what I felt like. I felt like, yo, like, just give me something, right? And so that's kind of the point. And so I'm stoked that you're going to help us out with that, and I'm excited to kind of talk more about it. And thank you for showing up and putting your neck on the line and saying everything you said. In closing, man, is there anything that you wanted to say or talk about before we wrap it up? And there's no time limit, so if you want to go for another diatribe away.
Hey, don't tempt me with a good time.
With a good time.
You got to remember, I'm what, 5 hours behind you? It's only 5:30 here, bro. So.
Hey, I got 8 hours of sleep for the first time in probably 6 months, so we're good.
He's ready. That's a week. That's a week,
right? For real. I think just like the biggest thing, if like anyone listening to this, like we can like share all of this stuff. Like I can share my heart with you. Like these guys can share their heart. Like, but you got to show up for yourself. Like that's the first thing. Like you got to show up, right? Like that's the hardest step is just getting there. And that there meaning not like a physical place, but just like taking that first step to where you want to be, right? Like the what's that saying? Like the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. But if you're worrying about that 1,000 miles the whole time, man, you're never even going to get started. So like, just show up for yourself would be like the first thing I'd want to say to people. And you don't have to show up with the perfect plan. Just show up, right? Because eventually, if you just show up, like the right things and pieces will start coming into play, right? They're not going to come into play if you're just sitting there stagnant. It's never going to happen. And then I have this written on my desk. This is something that I like to use. So I want to share it with you guys. And it's just a way that I keep myself in check. Because like we've talked a lot about like, what do you want for yourself? What do you want out of this year? Right. And like, I can say I want to do all these things. We could touch base in 6 months. And then I could come up with a bunch of reasons why I maybe didn't do them. Right. Or why it didn't work out. So like I have this at my desk and I read it every day. Says, do your choices, words, and behaviors actually reflect and support the person you're trying to become? And if my answer is no to that, I know exactly what I got to do tomorrow. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Support your outcome.
You know, no one's going to build the life that I want for myself and my wife, but me. Right? No one's going to care about my dreams and my goals more than me. The more I care about it, the more I pour into it, the more that other people may or may not see my passion. That's not really up to me. But the ones who see it and the ones that the message resonates with, they're going to get on board. You know what I mean? And then they're going to help. And then they're going to help someone else. And that's how you start making change.
Dude, what would you say, or how long or however would you say it took before you believed in your own word?
Being completely honest with you, there's a reason I still have notes on my desk and on my mirrors and in my bathroom to this day. Because there's always self-doubt. There's always like a lot of times you hear about like imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. Or that self-doubt. Like, and for me, I realize that I talk to myself more than I talk to anyone. So how I talk to myself matters. And it's real easy for me to get negative. So the way that I need to combat that negativity is with those other things, right? With that structure, with those notes. So I deal with it every day. I'll deal with it tonight before I go to bed and when I wake up to tomorrow. But the only thing is, I'm not going to let it define me. I'm not going to let it win, right? Because I know who I am, because I have a perfect track record on surviving bad days. And so far, I've done a pretty good job of figuring things out. And even if it didn't work out the way I wanted it to, it worked out the way I needed it to.
Yeah. That thing,
Holy shit. Perfect track record of surviving bad days is maybe my new favorite sentence. That's a
steal it, man. Steal it and use it.
Yeah. Drew, man, I really appreciate your time. We're going to wrap this thing up. I want to share this one quote with you guys because we talked a lot about kind of just how you end up somewhere, right? Talking about acceptance and everything else, accepting things before you change it. And I don't remember where the quote came from, so whoever said it, forgive me. Hopefully the quote gods don't strike me down. It says, what is the secret of your serenity? And the master says, wholehearted cooperation with the inevitable. And I've been reading that a lot lately because every time something goes wrong, I try to remind myself that, like, just cooperate with it and I'll have my revenge in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that.
Anyways, man. Yeah.
I like that last little bit, that little twist on the end, because it could have ended with just cooperate with it. But I like I'll have my revenge in the end. That's good.
Yeah, you get a vote.
Yeah.
Vote.
That's great.
Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Like they say, the enemy. Sometimes I'm the enemy, and that's all right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And sometimes you get a vote and you don't like
you.
the two choices, but you still got a vote in the matter. You know, you may not like them,
man,
but
that's a mouthful and a half right there, man. People I won't go on a rant about this, but people's ability to, like, I'm big on choices, and I'm big on the fact that choices have consequences. And people will be like, well, I didn't have a choice. You had a fucking choice, but the consequence just sucked.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes consequences do that. They just suck.
Yep.
And I've eaten some choices and been like,
right?
Well, this is happening. But no, man, I really do appreciate you. Thank you for showing up, man. And,
sometimes 50 is too much.
Yeah, 50 is too much. Thank you for showing up and really just putting out, dude, and laying your neck on the line. With all that being said, man, I'll see you guys on the path and be excellent.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you.